With the test fit of our mock-up complete, it's time to refine our die lines. Now, this is where we can make any fit adjustments and add other panels like dust and tuck flaps to our carton. Now, keep in mind that the converter may have to make minor adjustments to our die line for production purposes. But by ensuring that the die line is as accurate as we can possibly construct it, we're helping to speed up the process of getting our package design into production. So our label over there on the right is just fine as it is. The test fit went perfect, but maybe we have some concerns about the carton over here. So let me focus on the carton artboard. All right. Now, the overall fit was fine, but the top flap here on the end and the bottom flap here, these are actually glue flaps, and they're a little bit tall for what they're going to be doing. They actually tuck right up next to the back edge of this particular panel, and that's going to cause a problem. So I need to make these just a little bit shorter. Now, this will happen in the production process as well, but it's a good idea for me to go ahead and adjust them here so that I don't inadvertently put artwork out there that shouldn't be. So I'm going to select this top rectangle up here, and I want to adjust its height. I want to make it a little bit shorter. Now, I could use the bounding box here and just grab one of the handles and pull it down, but I would really just be guessing at the distance. I want a specific amount. I want a 1/16 of an inch. So for that, once I have it selected, I'm going to go over to the transform panel. And here in the transform panel, I can adjust the height. But if I do it right now, I might make a mistake. So I'm going to take a look at the reference point here. And sure enough, it would have been a mistake. The reference point is here at the top, so it would have shaved the 1/16 of an inch from the bottom, and then I'd have to move this item. So that's one more step that I don't want to have to make. So instead, I'm going to select the bottom center reference point and then adjust the height. So here in the height field, I'm just going to click between the number and the unit of measure. I'm going to type a minus sign and then the amount that I want to reduce this panel by. So that's going to be 0.0625 or a 1/16 of an inch. When I hit return, we can see a minor adjustment to that panel. Now, we'll do the same for the glue flap that's down here at the very bottom. This time, though, we're going to change that reference point to the top center. Okay, so now those two panels are adjusted. That is not too difficult to do, but what if we had to adjust a panel, say, like this one? What if I wanted to change the width of this panel? Well, now I've got to consider the other panels around it because changing the width of this panel is going to move these other panels. Well, that is going to be a two-step process, and while I don't need to do that here, let me just point out some ideas that may help you with this type of transformation. First, if it's not already done so, go ahead and remove all color from the fill of these items. There is not going to be a fill color on this anyway, so this is a good idea to do no matter what. I'm going to select all of these items. Over here in the bottom of the Tools panel, I'll select the Fill property, and then I'll choose the None property here, and that's going to help out. Next, I am going to go up to the View menu, and I'm going to choose Outline mode. Now, I really like this mode because, one, it will show me the center points of all of these panels, even if I don't have them selected. And two, if I zoom in really close. And so let me just zoom in to the package here. You can see that the strokes on these panels did not enlarge because the strokes are not being shown. It's simply the structure of the die line itself. So I am going to zoom back out here. And then I'm going to go to work on this. Now, as I said, this doesn't really need to happen, but just to show you what would transpire, I'm going to select this panel. And let's say I need to shrink this panel by a 1/16 of an inch. Okay. Once again, I would go over to my Transform panel. This time, I think I'm going to shrink it to the left. So I'm going to choose the left edge for the reference point. And then I will subtract my 1/16 of an inch here and slide that over. Now, that leaves this little gap in between, so I need to adjust these panels. I'll simply select them and then move them. Now, I'm using the regular selection tool, so another little quick tip for you. Anytime you're using the selection tool and you select an object, just hit the Enter key on your keyboard and the Move dialog will pop up. Here, I want to choose a negative value for my horizontal distance of 1/16 of an inch. I'm going to zero out the vertical distance, and if I toggle the preview, you can see those panels just slide right over next to that previous panel that I just adjusted. I'll tell this OK, and there we have it. Now, truly, we don't need to make that adjustment, so I'm going to step back a little bit here. I'm going to undo that move, and I'm going to undo that scale. And let's take a look at another type of transform. This panel here and its mate down here at the bottom are both glue panels. And so while I've shrunk the top and bottom of them, I also want to taper them a little bit. I don't want it to be a full square. I want the top edge on this one, the bottom edge on that one to be a little bit narrower than where they meet the package. So I'm going to go over to the direct selection tool. I'm going to drag across the top edge of this top glue flap. And then I'm going to go over to the toolbox and I'm going to double click on the scale tool. Double clicking on that will bring up the scale dialog. I'm going to choose a non-uniform scale, and I want to scale this horizontally. The value here is really kind of up for grabs, so be sure to toggle the preview on and off to kind of see the before and after. About 90% works for me here, and I'll just tell that OK. I'm going to repeat that process for the panel here at the bottom. I'll grab the direct selection tool, drag across those two endpoints, double click my scale tool, enter the value. It's non-uniform. Tell it OK. I'll also do this to the glue flap. So I'm going to grab my direct selection tool again, and I'm going to select this point, hold the shift key, and I'm going to select this point. Now, double click on the scale. This time it's going to be non-uniform, but instead of a horizontal adjustment, let me reset that to 100%. I'm going to do a vertical adjustment of 90%. And let's toggle the preview. Yeah, that looks good. I'll tell it OK. And there we have it. The last thing we need to do is add some dust flaps to our die line here. So I'm going to grab my rectangle shape tool, and I'm going to start here on the far left edge at the bottom. Once again, I start at the bottom left because this tool, when I just click with it, will always draw left to right, top to bottom. So for the width, that should match whatever that panel was. And so that's this 2.6563 in my case. So whatever the width of this panel is, that's what this should be. And now for the height. Well, for this, note that this side 1 is going to be right next to side 2 here. And when this carton folds up, sides 1 and 3 are going to face one another. And that's where these dust flaps are going to reside. So if those dust flaps are too tall in this case, they're going to bump up against one another. So to get an accurate size for these, what I'm going to do is take the original width of this secondary panel, which was 2.625, plus the 32nd of an inch, okay? And I'm just going to click up here in the width panel, and it'll go ahead and adjust it. You can see the width and the height now are the same. But then I'm going to go back in and do a little bit more math. Now I'm going to divide this. So I'll use a / here. And then I want to divide it a little more than half. So I'm going to do 2.2 for the value. And if we click up here in the width field again, it'll update it. It'll show me the height now is this 1.2074. So a little less than half of the original width. I'll tell that OK. And now I have a perfectly sized dust flap. I just need to replicate this for the other 3 spaces here. I'm going to use the regular selection tool. I'm going to hold down my Alt key or Option key on a Mac as I drag these panels into place. Now I want to replicate these 2 panels, so I have the second panel already selected. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click on the first panel to select them both. And now I can hold down the Alt key as I drag them up to replicate both panels at the same time. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Well, to finalize this refinement process, I'm going to print this out and cut out a new mock-up. I'll test fit it to my product and repeat this whole process if necessary. Now, taking the extra time now to ensure that my construction fits the product accurately is going to save me a lot of time later on in this process.